Thank you, Hemant. Welcome, everyone. Like Hemant mentioned, we are on day 9. It has been a power-packed agenda so far. I'll quickly do an introduction of universitytech.io. I know most of the people on the call would have heard and seen about us through various LinkedIn posts, but a small summary of what we are doing is we are bridging a gap between industry and academia for technology transfer and commercialization. This is often a sore topic to be discussed, but an important one to be discussed as well. A lot of research globally is not able to come into the market because of various breakdowns in communication, marketing, bureaucracy, and we are solving for that as a global organization, bringing universities and industries to connect with each other. I don't want to bore about our introduction. We'll talk about it through the day. But like Hemant mentioned, we have a power-packed panelists and speakers through the day and tomorrow who are going to touch upon some sensitive and important topics. And we begin today with a talk around a kind of a fireside chat around the topic about the broken compact that does industry academia collaboration needs reinvention. We have three power-packed speakers here, and I'm going to introduce them one by one, and I'm going to hand over to them. We have 30 minutes to conclude and speak about this important topic. I know 30 minutes are less, but I'll begin with Dr. Sarah Almoaiqel. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. She's the Vice Dean of the Deanship of Digital Transformation and E-Transactions at Prince Sultan University. She holds a PhD in Information Sciences and Technology from Pennsylvania State University. In her current role, Dr. Sarah supports the advancement of the university's digital transformation strategy, focusing on enhancing the educational experience, optimizing administrative processes, and fostering a digitally driven ecosystem that aligns with the university's strategic goals. Before joining PSU, she spent 11 years at King South University, latterly as head of software engineering department. Welcome, Dr. Sarah, and thank you for accepting our invitation. We look forward to hear from you. Next on, we have Ranjit Rajan, a senior technology strategist, thought leader, and C-suite advisor with 25 years of experience driving AI, digital transformation, and growth strategies across global technology firms, governments, and enterprises. With 18 years at IDC, he has shaped executive agendas and market perspectives worldwide. He advises on national digital agenda, go-to-market strategies, tech-driven transformation, and major tech investment decisions. He has built and led advisory teams of advisory experts, delivered 300 plus keynotes, and is an active angel investor and startup mentor across AI, space tech, and digital platforms. Welcome, Ranjit. Looking forward to hear from you on this industry academia reinvention. Next up, we have Dr. Dinesh Nambiar. Dr. Dinesh is a seasoned leader who uniquely bridges the precision of global pharmaceuticals with the agility of the FMCG industry. With a PhD in chemistry and over 29 years of experience as leading organizations such as Godrej and Sandoz, he has built a reputation of driving innovation, governance, and operational excellence at scale. He has led large R&D teams transforming complex product categories from household insecticides to personal and baby care into market-leading solutions. With nearly 2 decades of experience embedding pharma-grade quality and regulatory standards, including US FDA and EMA frameworks, he helps organizations turn compliance into strategic advantage. With deep cross-regional experience across Europe and ASEAN, he brings a strong focus on product integrity, ESG compliance, and long-term stakeholder value, making him a trusted voice in both innovation and governance. With this kind of a panel, I think it's best I go on mute and hand over to three of you to deliberate on the conversation around industry academia collaboration. Maybe Ranjit, you can begin and we can take the conversation forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Makarand, and great to have you both, Dr. Sarah and Dinesh, on this fireside chat. I think this is a very interesting topic. It's been a topic of discussion across academia and industry across the world, especially in the sort of academic circles in the West primarily, and increasingly, this is becoming an increasing, interesting topic also here in the Middle East, also in Asia as well. I think the question around commercialization of technology, of research, or of R&D within the academic system, and the commercialization of that R&D is a significant topic, because of the fact that traditionally the academic system is built on publication cycles, on research papers and citations and so on, and it has its own sort of life cycle and timelines and so on. Whereas commercialization of innovation and so on requires long-term investment, patience, secrecy, and building of IP over a period of time, and so on. So there's often a disconnect. And in the university circles, particularly in the West and some of the most prominent elite universities, there is this pressure to keep publishing, and which sort of pushes researchers towards sort of going after these novelty or novel topics and so on, and more incremental research and publication on those topics and so on. Whereas commercialization drives require more patient investment over a period of time and so on. So the incentives often are slightly different, and that therein lies the problem. I think in the Middle East, particularly in countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, and so on, there's been an attempt to sort of unify that around national goals and focus areas. So I think there is this more collaboration and coordination in some sense on the key topics that or areas or outcomes that the nation wants to pursue, and therefore aligning both areas. But I think it still is a challenge. And I think we certainly need to move towards a model where which reward the researchers for not just publishing, but for delivering knowledge that can really benefit a society and the national goals and so on. So with that, let me pause here, and maybe the others, Dr. Sarah and Dinesh, will have more ideas to add.
Thank you for making those very valid points. Just a bit of a background, I worked in King Saud University in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and also Prince Sultan University, which is a much smaller non-profit university. And in those two universities, as a researcher and as someone who worked both as a faculty member and in the administrative aspects, I saw that faculty members and researchers were pushed towards publishing in reputable journals, rather than finding a problem that needs to be solved by industry. They were trying to find a problem that has never been addressed before so that they can get published more quickly or more easily. So they find themselves in some institutions working on very strong research output with a lot of novelty that doesn't translate into market needs or market-ready solutions. I have seen cases where research centers have taken an initiative and have been more agile and have been working on smaller research projects where there's more iteration, and where the governance model for that research project requires that research center to work with a specific industry partner and co-define the problem before you even start the research project. Only then could there really be impactful results from the research that get translated directly into industry-ready market solutions. That's my perspective. We're both working very hard, the researchers and industry. We're just not working together, and we're not using the most appropriate governance model.
Hi. Since I come from the industry, almost 29 years in the industry, I think, and last few years, practically half of my career was into FMCG, where cost is the most important thing, right? And I can share a recent example. I was discussing with another I'm consulting to a few companies now, and so we had a scientist who came up and said, "Oh no, this is a great solvent and we can do it and all those things." I said, "Don't do anything until we know the cost, right?" So sometimes it's a beautiful, he could get a publication on that. It's a novel solvent and he could get a publication on that. It's as simple thing as a solvent. But like Dr. Sarah mentioned, that the emphasis in the universities are for publication, and industry thinks totally different. They're looking at cost, and secondly, they look at time. So cost and time are factors which are very much driving, because at the end of the day, whatever said and done, industries look at profit and loss at the end of the day, right? Whatever said and done, because sometimes CEOs lose the job because they don't deliver quarter by quarter results. So that's one approach. So how much of that can we help the industry, help the academia in transforming the approach to look at things in a very different way? I know novel and newer methods need to be developed, newer technologies need to be developed. At the same time, can we also have a much more of an open discussion with the academia to get more and more cost, time, and quality-driven approaches, so that that can be built into the thought process of the academia going forward, so that it becomes a blend, that we don't lose the primary objective of novelty, but at the same time we don't lose the focus that ultimately we have to deliver it into the market, because that's how the that ultimately leads to products, which leads to the money coming in, and again it can fuel the whole thing. So in my approach, I think it's a combination that needs to really work out. Both the parties need to come together and see how things can work out in a better way.
Yeah, go ahead, Ranjit.
I think that I mean, it is clear that industry, of course, needs to continue to fund research and support academia. And there's no doubt about that, of course. But you're right, Dinesh. I think that from an industry perspective, the cost and time are critical parameters. And I think, but at the same time, as Dr. Sarah said, that collaborative framework and the governance model is absolutely critical, so it succeeds, because industry can really bring some more resources, often bring in that real world relevance to the to the research in these academic institutions, right? So that's absolutely critical. And I think and also there are different ways to partner, right? So it's not just about funding specific projects, but also across different types of partnerships that industry can look at. I mean, clearly they can also decide on what type of research to fund as well. There is the sort of pre-competitive or pre-competition sort of research areas, which are more foundational research, which the universities can focus on and decide on their own, whereas more of the real world related research that industry can perhaps influence as well. So there could be some distinction between foundational research areas versus more commercially oriented real world solutions that can be done. The partnership models also extend well beyond just funding specific projects. It could be, of course, setting up co-innovation labs and research centers, which I think many companies are doing with universities, supporting internships and so on, and then also driving not just the research but also the sort of the next steps in terms of commercialization, which is more entrepreneurship and innovation, right? So driving, setting up incubators and accelerators and so on, so that entrepreneurs can emerge as well from those. So industry can play across that innovation value chain, right from research downstream as well. I think, and many of the if you look at this region, for example, in many of the key universities, we see a lot of impact that these commercial organizations having, especially on the technology side, that I've seen quite a number of such collaborative partnerships have started, and of course many of them are yet to yield or fully realize their potential. But I think there's been a lot of good things that have happened.
True, Ranjit. Essentially, industry can partner very well, and in fact, in sort of a train the academia as well in terms of scaling it up and tech transfer. because I think that's their strength. They may not have the bandwidth and the time and energy to sit down to do the basic research or the much more detailed research, but they're very good in scaling up. They know how to scale up things. They can think much in a bigger sense. They can think, like somebody gave an example during leadership talk to me that you should always you should be on the dance floor, but also you can look from the balcony. So if you stay on the balcony, you have a much wider view, and that is where industry can come in. Let the academia do the dance and everything else. When I'm in dance, basically do the work and the research, and industry can guide them that way. I think that really helps them not to go too much into uh, theoretical stuff. At the same time, really look into the practicality of it, which industry has the advantage. And I think I would say that industry should provide some resources internally, because it's not only about making the money, which is the profit and loss which we are talking about, but it's also taking the whole leap of generation leap going forward. In my opinion, that's the way we could do it.
I do want to add that I like that you brought up funding from industry, because I think that once funding is involved, there's a lot more accountability required, especially from industry. Whereas, if you're funded by a research center or, for the purpose of disseminating knowledge, it's different from being funded by a company that wants to see results and knows exactly what they need. So setting those clear boundaries and accountability mechanisms so that you ensure that the money that you pay results in an outcome that you're looking for can be really positive for the industry and academia collaboration.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think that's absolutely on point. I think the obviously the industry wants to see returns both in terms of the outcomes from those projects, but also in terms of evangelizing their own, especially on the technology side, for example, they would like to evangelize their own technological tools among the students and so on, and get them to start using them early on in their lives, so that they can become advocates for that later on and so on. So there's a number of different objectives that industry tries to achieve, or companies try to achieve, when they partner with universities. I think that the outcomes in terms of, if you look at the outcomes in terms of number of research papers and patents and so on that have emerged from this region, from the Gulf states and Saudi Arabia, for example, where Dr. Sarah is in, you have seen a significant growth in the number of patents and research papers over the last 5-10 years maybe, and so there's a lot of output that is coming through, and I think there is that channeling of that into real world solutions is what is required at this stage, and I think that funding in this part of the world is also not just limited to industry, right? There's also a lot of government funding that comes through as well. And unlike in, say, for example, in many of the Western countries, often they rely heavily on industry, on the private sector, and so on. Whereas in this part of the world, we also have a lot of funding that's coming from semi-government organizations, from governments, and so on and so forth. I think there's a much more tighter sort of collaboration that exists here. If I refer to the sort of traditional model of collaboration, right, which is the sort of the triple helix model, where you have academia, industry, and government that have to work together very closely to drive innovation. I think in this part of the world, that collaboration is much tighter, and because of the involvement of government a lot more in some of this. So I think that so the alignment towards these national goals and outcomes also then gets taken care of in some way. But I agree. I think eventually one needs to look at how transparent the system is, how much of governance is there, do you share the right ethical frameworks, how much of academic integrity is there, and so on and so forth. Those principles are kind of foundational.
Yeah, I agree with your approach, bringing the government, and I think what you clearly mentioned that in the Middle East, that's really being working very well. The government also get involved, and I hope that translates much more into the other regions of the world as well, because I think sometimes like publishing papers, sometimes it's only to publish something that has come right. And when you work, you sometimes also should know what has gone wrong, right? And I don't think anybody gets a publication saying that I did something, I tried this technologies or whatever, and it didn't work, right? And I explain why it didn't work, right? Um, uh, so I think when you have something like the government coming in, it also allows you to do more failures, and failures.
I agree with you as well.
Yeah, so more and more failures happen. I think success, the victory is after the failures. You fail a couple of times, you really know what to correct and what to move, and you and if you publish failures, I don't know how many publications will allow failures to be published. If you publish failures, probably it will help others not to reinvent the whole wheel. And we are in a digital world. We are reinventing the wheel every in a small tech hub or small laboratory that is there in this world.
I agree completely. And when you're funded publicly and when you're not under pressure and scrutinization from an industry that wants to see return on investment, you're more likely to be more transparent in your research outcomes. And having that pressure from industry can impact the results, whether it's purposefully or not purposefully, it can happen. And so I agree with you completely. It does reduce risk once you have publicly funded or funded by government entities.
And also, I think the other thing is that other difference, say between some of the Western countries and this region, and also broadly in the Asia, is that a lot of the funding in most of the, let's say, the US or Europe, a lot of the funding is sort of goes to these elite universities. So or they have this outsized access to funding. So you have the Ivy League universities and others in the US and so on who have access to large amounts of funds for doing their research, and while the smaller sort of universities don't have as much, and so there's a disparity in terms of access to funds that exist there. And I think here in this region in particular, I think that isn't as much. So there is that as well. But on the other hand, you also have these elite universities which are only now emerging in the region. So if you look at in this region, you have some universities which are now increasingly investing in R&D and research and so on. So I think over time they will be known for their research, and so we are yet to get to that point. But I think increasingly they're investing in it. But that oftentimes in the West, that's what happens. You have this concentration of investment with just the elite universities, and there is a need also for. I think there's a need also for creating these alliances. I think some of it already exists, but more of that, these network of alliances between universities and not just the elite ones, but also across geographies, to create those alliances so they can share their their resources, their capabilities, their talent, and have partnerships across universities, and that would really help as well. I think a lot more needs to be done on that front.
I can second Ranjit on this, because especially coming from the Asia part, and then I've been working in ASEAN as well, there's not much that is happening on that front, and I think that's hindering them. It's hindering the Asia part very much strongly, and so I think there are great talent sitting in these universities as well, and if some amount of outlook is for these universities as well, I think that would really open up the way of thinking. It will just, I would say, democratize thinking in a way that a lot of ideas come together, and it can be probably we should look at platforms where these ideas could jump in, it could be put in together, and it could be grabbed by the Ivy Leagues of the world, or the universities in the Middle East or somewhere else. So that the idea can then go in. So I think that would, in a way, fast track humanity in general, right? So because today it is in patches, and then there is a focus on IP, and and monetize IP rather than focusing on humanity, and with the situation today happening in the world, where humanity is little bit forgotten, I think that's an approach. If we can bring together, we as scientists and policymakers, and influencing policymakers, if we can come together and have a thought process push forward, I think that would really help. Because more and more, if the world has to go ahead, it has to be for all. It cannot be inclusive, or so I think that approach would also help other universities to also contribute in their way. It could be big or small, and other regions as well, including scientists coming from the industry as well, to contribute to success of new technologies and new thought processes.
Thank you, Dinesh. I really liked how you brought up humanity. Even though you work in industry, you still value that we can bring knowledge and impact the world in a great way, even if it doesn't result in direct return on investment. Thank you for making that point.
I think we are just about a minute out into the session. Maybe a closing remarks from all of you. I particularly like the idea of publishing research that doesn't work, kind of anti to the whole tech transfer discussion, Dinesh. But thank you for bringing that point here. Anything to close out? Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, so I think just a couple of, I think just to summarize, right? I think so clearly, industry and academia today they are no longer separate worlds, right? I mean, they've not been separate worlds in some parts of the world, but it's not the case in many other geographies and many parts of the world. So they're no longer separate worlds. They are sort of interdependent engines for knowledge creation, and then the future of innovation depends on reviewing and rethinking those incentives, and how we can redistribute opportunity and design some collaboration models and governance models that with which we can achieve more transparency and more impact, right? And really the question is not about who controls the knowledge, but how we ensure that the knowledge serves society. I think just to bring that society piece in the end, and it's really about how knowledge serves society rather than any single stakeholder in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think well said, Ranjit. I think what I could take away from the whole nice discussion we had is there's huge scope of collaboration across, I think. So more and more people come on board, it will help everybody. And end of the day, it bring the point of humanity, of course, there, but it will help people to see. And when Makarand mentioned about the failures, yeah, because failures always help you in thinking very differently as well. So I think it's a combination of all those things. It once comes together, and also the government policy, government funding, which is very critical in such sort of approaches. Industry sometimes are skeptical about the whole thing, but government, if it comes in through, I think it really nurtures the overall picture better.
Thank you. I think the most important thing that I took away is for successful industry, academia collaboration to occur, you have to have good governance, you have to have clear boundaries, a discussion of accountability mechanisms, and once that's in place, for sure the outcomes will be satisfactory to everyone involved.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Sara. Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you, Ranjit. Those were some great conversations that we had to kick off our day.